Hello, welcome to my presentation about data entities. My name is Peter Prokopec. I will give you an overview and I will talk about lessons that I learned. I'm an AX technical lead at JJ Food Services, a food wholesale company, mainly business to business, but in this situation now, we may be the only company who can give you next day or even same day delivery with your groceries for individuals also. I'm the owner of DuxVision ERP Consulting. Contact me if you are lack of technical resources. I studied IT engineering and recently finished MBA also. I have experience with AX from 2003. I worked with every version and I also had functional and technical work. My main experience is technical, but I also had full lifecycle implementation as trade and logistics consultant, and I led projects. I will talk about data entities. I will give you an overview. I will show how data management work, and I will show vendor invoice automation for this, but the target will be the data management and not this functionality. I will show how to create data entities. I will show how to use OData and what is that for. I will also show you how to create composite data entities, what is the difference between simple and composite data entities, and I will tell you a few lessons that I learned. In AX 2012, we had document services and custom services inside application integration framework. Custom services are X++ code that you can call from outside and they can do actually almost anything in AX. Document services are query-based data representation in AX 2012, and you could use a wizard to create a document service, and it was giving you or writing back data that the query represented. In D365, custom services are still available, but document services were deprecated and data entities are used instead. So before you already had data management framework or DIXF, data integration import-export framework, and in D365 we still have this data import-export framework, but now it is based on AOT objects, data entities. In AX 2012 we already had this data entity bird, but this was improved and this became a type of an object in the AOT. If you look at this diagram, you can see that you can communicate to data entities in two ways, through OData or through the data management platform. Through OData, you can use Excel, you can use external tools like Postman, you can use a browser. For data management, you need to use AX UI or there are other options, but these are the ones that I will talk about. I have some blog posts in this topic. One is about how to call an AX data entity from Postman, the OData way, and also how to use Excel queries to call an OData endpoint. What is a data entity? If you studied IT, you most probably learned about normalization. When you have a lot of data and you would like to figure out how to create tables and how to connect those tables from this many data, how to structure your data, that's the normalization. That's the way to do it. The main goal of normalization is to reduce redundancy and dependency. The goal is to have smaller database and faster, so better performance. There is first normal form, second, third. It's a structured process, and at the end you will have separate tables and the data will not be redundant. So that's the thing that you can see on the middle of this slide. Is the normalized model of customers. You can see it is put in 4 tables. Data entity is the way how users see this data, because for the user it doesn't really matter which table holds the data. For the user, for example, the postal address of the customer is still the data of the customer. The email address of the customer is still a customer data. The city and everything, they are just the data of the customer, so they are not interested in the table structure. And data entity is the denormalized form, so the way how users see this data. That's what you can see on the right side of the screen. Data entity use cases. You can use data entities for synchronous services. That's the OData way that I talked about. You can use it for asynchronous integration. That's the data management way. You can use it for data migration, so import and export of data. That's again mainly data management framework, because that's the one for the bigger amount of data. Synchronous OData way is not for huge amount of data. And you can also use it for business intelligence, reports mainly. But I would like to mention that you will see Azure Data Lake as an important part of integration and business intelligence. This presentation will not give you much details about it, but it is important to mention Azure Data Lake here. So let's see data management. The UI looks this way. So it's inside AX. There is a workspace called data management. You can import and export data, and you can manage your data entities. You can clean up data, which is important. In the lessons learned, I will tell you about it. This is how it looks. Here I clicked the export button, and I'm loading some data entities. and adding them. Then I click export, and that's the way how to create an export. So I said vendor invoice automation. It is under accounts payable invoices, pending vendor invoices. It's a functionality for reading vendor invoices. For example, if you have an OCR tool, and Microsoft also has one, it can be an external tool. Also, for example, if you are receiving your vendor invoices through PDF documents in email, an OCR tool can read those PDF files and then translate it to AX, and they can appear in this pending vendor invoices form, where you are able to validate and post these invoices that you actually received in an email in a PDF file. There are three data entities related to this: vendor invoice header, vendor invoice line, and vendor invoice document attachment. A deeper introduction of this functionality can be found on the link that I have pasted here. But let's see how it looks. So first of all, pending invoices. As I said, it is under accounts payable, invoices, pending vendor invoices. Here I have already one line that's loaded. So this is the header of the invoice. For purchase order 26. And if I would like to export this data, I will need to go to Data Management Framework, which is under System Administration, Workspaces, Data Management. So here, if I would like to export this, which is just for us to see, because mainly we will import these invoices, but when I want to export anything, I should go to the export. For vendor invoices demo, I will create a new one, and I will add the related entities. So as I said, vendor invoice header is one for this functionality, is one data entity. The target format could be CSV, Excel, XML. There are different formats. Let's use CSV for now. You can select between full push and incremental push, and you can select importable fields only. Let's do that for now. So I'm adding this vendor invoice header. It will appear here, this data entity. Then I also need vendor invoice lines. which is this one. Same format, full push again, importable fields again. And I will not add the document attachment for now. Let's just use this two. I can say generate package. This will help me to create the import. So I'm doing this export to see how this looks, and then I can fill data in these CSV files and do an import for them. So let's say this is the two entity I need only. I don't want the attachments now. I need to click export. So the message says the export is scheduled and it will be running, and I need to refresh the form. So okay, there is this refresh button. I can see not run, executing. Let's click refresh. It succeeded, as it was just one line for the header and actually one line for the line also of this vendor invoice, which I wanted to show, but then yes, here it is. So this is the line and this is the header. So this was a successful export, and I can go and view the staging data, download each file separately, but as I clicked create a data package, let's download the whole package here. Okay, it is here. Let's go to the folder. This is the one. So I will say demo. Okay, let's extract this zip file and see what is inside. You can see a description of the data structure and schema, and you can see the two entities that I selected. So in the header I should see one line, and in the lines another one. Yes, here is the header and the data that was in the form, and this is how the line looks. Okay, let's say I would like to import data now. I will edit this file. Create some new lines and try to load them. I mean, that was the header, and I will do the same for the lines. I will not take your time with this, but I already created one. So I created lines here, or a different line here. And put it in a zip file. So this is what we are going to import. Okay, how that works. I go back to the data management workspace, and I go to import. Here I will add a name, vendor invoice import demo, not demo, but demo. I will add the file that I created. So if I go here, oh yes, this is the better example. Okay, so I'm loading a different file. There are two headers in it and more lines, you can see. So this is a better file. Then I open it and it should see that we have vendor invoice header and vendor invoice line in this file. It is CSV format, and everything that we did when we did the export is already described in the file, so I don't need to set this up. It's after selecting the zip file, it's automatically loaded from the manifest and the schema files. So my only task is to import. So like when we did the export, the execution begins and the dialog tells me that I need to click refresh a few times. Okay, let's see, refresh. It has actually failed. I will not take your time with trying to figure out the reason. There are logs here, but I think you can understand how this import and export works, and now you can go and try to figure out why this particular one failed. It is not really important for our presentation now. So the next thing I would like to talk about is how to develop data entities. When you go to Visual Studio and you add new item to your project, as I said, there is a new type called data entity. It's a new object type, or how we call it now, it's an element in the AOT. There is a wizard where you can set different things. You can select your main table, your main data source, and then which fields you would like to see from that data source. And after you click finish, you will get a data entity and a few more objects, staging table and security objects privileges. But this is the data entity. This is how it looks in Visual Studio. And if I would like to examine it, it has a data source which could be one table, but it could be more also. So the data can come from more tables, but in a flat file format. So each data will put in one record, let's say, one line in Excel or one record in the staging table. And from these data sources, you put your fields here in the data entity fields. The naming convention is to give it a prefix like we use JAD, J-A-D, give it a conceptual name, and a postfix should be their entity. The easiest way to test your data entity after this is to create a runnable class, which was in AX 2012 job, but now in D365 we have runnable classes, and you can write select statement just if it's a real table or view. And actually it is a real view in the background. It is creating a view in SQL Server, and I will show it. So let's create a new data entity. As I said, I go to my project, right click, add new item, select data entity, which is under data model, give it a prefix like DV for DAX Vision, demo is the functional representation or the business name, and entity is the postfix. So after clicking add, a wizard should appear. You don't have to use the wizard. You can create data entities from the right click menu based on tables. So you right click a table and create data entity, but this is the way that I will show now. So primary data source, let's say it's cast table. It's a master data. Enable public API. This is the OData way, and you will see that it is how you will find this data entity when you search for OData endpoints. So to be able to find it easily, let's say it AAA demo, and public collection is AAA demos, so it will appear in the beginning of the list. Staging table is named the same way automatically, but finished with staging and not with entity. And as I said, there will be privileges created, view and maintain privileges automatically by the wizard. So let's click next. And while this one is executing, let me go back to the presentation. So after creating your data entity, you will have fields that you selected from your data source. But you can add also fields that are not physically present in the database, and you have two options. You can create computed or virtual fields. Computed fields are TSQL fields added to the SQL view. So it is physically there in the database. That's why it is faster, but it is more complicated to develop. I have some blog posts. You can have a look at how to create a quite complex computed column in a view in AX D365 or 2012. It is the same for data entities. The virtual field is different. Virtual field doesn't have a representation in the database. It is an X++ code that you put in the postload method of the data entity, and it is similar to display methods of tables. So it is executed record by record, and it has some effects on the performance. So you should be clever with using them, but sometimes you can only create some fields using this technology. There is a good description of these two unmapped field types under this Microsoft documentation. So back to the wizard. The next page is this one, and you can see that a lot of fields could be selected or unselected. So let's unselect all now. And only select a few one. For example, the ones that are mandatory. Okay. So only these few fields. Other than that, we can add additional data sources. They are listed here. Or we can add data source this way. Or when the data entity is created, we can still modify it after the wizard. So I will just stay with this easy example. And you have an add virtual field button here. So let's add virtual field. I clicked it, it doesn't show up, but actually it is there at the last place. Let's say the type will be name. Field name will be virtual field, and let's add one more. Data type could be name again, it doesn't really matter, but this one will be computed field. And I click finish. So you can see I have a data entity, two privileges, and the staging table after this point. If I go to the data entity I can see the data source contains only the customers because I didn't add anything else. I can see the selected 3 fields, and I can also see virtual field and the computed field. So this is a computed field. I say this computed field is yes, but in this case I need to tell what is the method that is creating the data here. So I have pre-created a very easy computed field. If I go to the methods, add the new one, and save it, I should be able to select this computed method as the source of the computed field. What about the virtual field? I will not need to select a method because this will be calculated by the postload method, but in this case I have to say it is not a computed field. For now it would be okay, but let's create this one also. So as I said, I need to go to the postload method, and in the postload I will say this dot virtual field okay, maybe it is not yet here, so let's just save at this point and let's build our solution. And see if there are any errors. While it is building, I will show you that giving some data is quite easy in postload method. You can write any select statements or anything and say this dot, then the name of the field. I think I named it virtual field, and then give the value. Here I just typed virtual, but it could be a more complex thing also. And as I said, it is executed line by line, so it can be different based on each line. While this is generating, let's continue with the presentation. I selected database synchronization also, so this is the stage when it is creating the data in the database. So I will go here and open AXDB and the views. What was the name of our entity? It's DV demo entity. So dbo.dv, nothing is here yet. But after this one finishes, if there will be no errors, then the database synchronization will create this view. While it's happening, let's go to the presentation. You can see the important things here on the screenshot also. Is computed field, the method that we use, and the string size, or this should be related to the data entity that we use, the extended data type that we use. So an easy computed field is like this one, but you can go more complex. For example, here it's a much more complex field, and in my blog post I also give you some ideas how to make complex computed fields. The virtual field is just X++ code, or not just, but it's an X++ code. And here is one example. For example, you can create full name when you add last name, comma, first name. And here you select is computed field no, and it is loaded in the postload method, and map entity to data source is the other side when you decompose it at the time of import. So this one says it's completed. Let's see if we have the view now in the database. So I refresh it and go to dbo.dv-demo. You can see it is now here. Okay, what is this? If I go to, for example, alter in a new query editor window, I can see the details of this entity. So I will not really want to alter the view. I just would like to see what does it contain. So I will change it. So here you can see the fields that I selected, a few more that I didn't select but automatically added, data area ID, for example, partition, rec ID, and so on. And you can see the computed column. The data that I put in every record is computed. So this is how it looks. If I say execute, this is the result. Obviously, if I say select top 1000, for example, I should see the same result. Computed is here, computed is here. But also would like to use the virtual field, so let's say this dot virtual field equals to virtual. Okay, one more important thing before I check my data entity on the UI is the label. So there was an automatic label used here. I would like to change this label to AAA TV demo entity.